I grew up in a very large, multinational, charismatic Pentecostal church. Oh yeah, well, like you're definitely on the spectrum somewhere, but that so often gets thrown around as just a backhanded insult at people. It's a backhanded insult, just an insult, right?
Today I have a very special guest, my friend Jessie Noble, and we met actually not very long time ago, but we immediately hit it off because that's what happens when two ADHD meet. You're weird. We will be friends. Jessie, would you like to tell our audience who you are?
Hello, my name is Jessie Noble. My pronouns are they, she. I'm a board member of a not-for-profit called the Defence LGBTI Information Service, or DEFGLIS. I am a national speaker and intersectional advocate. A lot of my advocacy falls within the current and former defence veterans space from an LGBT perspective. But as you mentioned, an ADHD, trans, non-binary, half Italian person, that very quickly becomes very intersectional in a lot of the spaces that I work in.
When I met Jessie, I was like, I need to interview them because it's not only about your work, it's not only about the things that we have to, in common, but also part of my research, not necessarily people that are trans are, autistic, but that people that are autistic can have some sort of gender, fluidity.
Yeah.
And because of that sense of potentially what is gender, that questioning and that deep philosophical thinking on, I don't associate myself with either of the binaries options that are there. So how was your trajectory on discovering that on yourself?
When we talk about the Venn diagram and the overlap of things, sometimes it can be a short jump to things like eugenics and stuff, right? Which isn't fantastic. But I guess the shared similarities is that in a lot of these instances, whether it's neurodivergency or gender diversity, you are existing outside of social norms inherently. And so where you are challenging already in a particular area of your life social norms, or you've deconstructed those, it can then flow, or more readily, it makes it easier to assess or become introspective or have self-awareness about those other areas as well.
Yes. Interesting, because you also came out quite publicly not long ago. How was that introduced? Because you probably got the diagnosis in autism as well late in life, as we were talking about it. It was something that came together. How was the combination of the two?
So it's been a little bit of a journey. So I have a formal ADHD diagnosis of like combined ADHD. I was actually diagnosed with ADHD when I was a child. My school forced my mum to get me tested, but that was in the 90s, and so it was ADD. But as it was relayed to me later in life, because my family didn't really talk about it or didn't really acknowledge or accept it,
right?
I was sort of right on the line for, could have gone either side
at the time.
And so the psychiatrist in question who'd done the assessment had offered my mother the sort of medication treatment,
right?
But my parents declined the medication, and then I kind of, like many people, sort of fumbled their way through life with my family not talking about it, not really acknowledging it. Maybe my parents were doing things about it in the background, because I'd certainly walk into their bedroom and there'd be books on the floor, like, and I'd say, "Mum, what's you and your ad child?" And Mum would go, and Mum would say, "Oh, it's just someone with who's very special with a lot of energy," kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess what came out of that, though, was I had a really difficult time with school. So I've gone my whole way through both school, higher education, and into the middle of postgrad.
Wow.
So in terms of coping mechanisms and understanding myself, or even going, why do I have RSD, right? I haven't had the names for any of these things. I haven't had the perspectives and the lenses to look and understand these things about myself, but I've always felt at odds with the world in many ways, and never really been sure why. Because people around will go, oh yeah, well, like, you're definitely on the spectrum somewhere, but that so often gets thrown around as just almost a backhanded insult at people. As a backhanded insult, just an insult, right? Like an offhand insult at people these days. So
or
was
trying to play it down, like everyone is a little bit like we were talking
oh,
about.
you're a geek, well, you must be on the spectrum.
So
and in that sense, it's not really acknowledging the reality of that for you. It's kind of dismissing it at the same time. So at university, it was like, oh, if I listen to this Thunderstorm soundtrack online, I can write my university essays really well. Or, oh, I study really well to the sound of the washing machine and the dryer going in the background. My brain's fizzing, and I'm getting distinctions from pacing back and forth in the room and with all this white noise and things.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, but I've had to essentially
find your own ground.
Yeah, like bootstrap this together, right, over the course of my life.
That is so fantastic, because I also been diagnosed late, and I realized only after being diagnosed how many tactics I adopted throughout my life in different stages of my life that were completely because of my diagnosis, but I didn't know. So I was like desperately finding ways to cope with things that other people seem to get it super easy. And I was like, I didn't have a name for it. But I just that's why I needed everything so organized. That's how my brain works. And I see a lot of people doing the same, but the cost of that is huge because we did that not in the most, let's just say, not in the better mind frame, right? Like we are doing that as a punishment more than being compassionate. But I'm doing this because I think there's something wrong with me, and then I need a tool, I need a system, or I need to buy something to make me fit into this space, which comes to the next question, that you are not in a space that is very accommodating to difference, to in general. Also in a country where we are, Australia, growing up in a country that is so conservative in general, how was that coming out for you?
There's certainly cultural elements that come into it, right? I think like the Japanese parallel is the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Within Australian culture, we talk about egalitarianism and the fair go, which is a whole separate podcast.
Yes,
but that egalitarianism is more about sameness than it is about the allowances and the equity. It's in trying to like fumble my way through the world, that's always been a really difficult thing, because I'm somebody who's in the 90th percentile for extroversion.
The opposite of me. How could we be friends?
We've found our middle ground.
We found it.
It also meant then when you layer that with ADHD and then autism, there's a really socially awkward kid. I'm probably still a really socially awkward adult, and I don't always realize it. But I think that the other context to this was that I grew up in a very large multinational charismatic Pentecostal church.
Oh my God, we need another podcast just for that one.
So, but ironically, right? I mean, the irony of that is that within that construct of church and youth group, that was charismatic. All of the people that I was looking up to at around the age of 12 or 13 were these charismatic preachers who had what appeared to be, because it wasn't true under the surface, fantastic people skills. So the communication skills were excellent. And so that's what I was idolizing in terms of role models that I was looking to. And so I thought that if I wanted to make it in the world at that point in time, I was going to need to become like those people. So in terms of,
just before you got there, so until then, you didn't have any public speaking intentions. You just got that from that experience.
A little bit. I mean, I'd always enjoyed music. I'd never necessily been shy about performing or being involved.
I can't imagine you being shy in any
No.
way.
I'm so shy. So shy.
Never.
but it was sort of the next level of that,
right?
Because these people, were preaching and speaking to hundreds and thousands of people at a time within this very large church that I was in, and then would connect with people one-on-one, because there's also a pastoral care aspect that came for a lot of these people too. We're throwing high fives and going, "Hey Tiger, how you doing?
Oh my God.
What's going on? Awesome!" And in a very Aussie way,
right.
But it was well dressed. It was cool. It was contemporary.
Did you feel like that it was awkward enough, like it was quirk enough for you to be your extroverted self, even though it was in church, which is like, how could you find yourself in church knowing all of those intersectionalities that they didn't accept at the time?
No language, because this was the 90s and the early noughties as well, right?
The
noughties, like the early 2000s.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, the height of queerness was Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, like OG version, right? In the early 2000s, which was heresy within the church.
Yeah.
But I essentially, from these preachers and pastors, modeled and failed over, like iteratively failed over and over again, adapted jokes, learnt what got people going, and what connected with people, because it was all about delivering a message and communicating with people,
right,
and connecting with people emotionally. And I would say that I was probably still always socially awkward in a lot of settings, but I learned how to fake it till I became it, so to speak, in many different contexts and settings.
To what extent do you think that level of masking, or otherwise I'm not sure how much the masking would be for you, knowing that you're already 90% extrovert? So it's not like me trying to be the same thing, right? But how much do you feel that the detriment of trying to fit in that space?
Oh, all the time. But I didn't know that I was masking.
Right.
So like through my 20s, I had every stress-related not every, but a large amount of stress-related diseases or symptoms that you could have, right? I've had Bell's palsy, I've had borderline chronic fatigue in the form of glandular fever.
Wow.
I've had shingles. I've had a lot of different things happen over the course of my life, and then just typically burning out by the middle of the year and not being able to understand why I'm so sick for no reason. So yeah, I've certainly had that too. But I think that I didn't have the language to realize that it was masking. I just thought I needed to identify how I was going to connect with every audience that I was connecting with. Not necessarily from a preaching perspective. I was just thinking about how to socially survive in the world, whether it was in a workplace or whether it was in a volunteer scenario that I was part of, or church, or wherever I was, right? I legitimately wanted to connect with people.
Yeah. And it was your way to be accepted in a way, because
absolutely,
what masking is not only survival, but it's also safety.
Yeah.
And safety is a major issue that everyone, protects their own safety in their own way. But humans want to connect with others in order to survive. And because we try to connect and we try so hard, and sometimes harder than other people, how did you find your way out, understanding that was a point there that you learn about relationship with people, how good you were to connect with people because of the things you learn in church, at the same time getting that boundary of not overextending yourself to your health detriment or to your well-being, by not being in church anymore, but also in your relations to today?
I mean, getting divorced is a pretty quick way to get yourself out of church. But it's how many people leave, right?
Yeah.
And especially when you consider sort of the purity ethics around church, and how
exclusion methods in general.
But I think even when we're thinking in the context of relationships, right? whether it's at a young age. A lot of people will end up exiting the church as they sort of hit their 20s because there's an incongruence from the purity aspects that are promoted of, say, being a gold star virgin before you, or a reformed virgin in terms of dating and then getting married and things like that. Or then the other part, next sort of part, is when people like me who were gold star virgins, hit their 30s and run into the relational issues of long-term relationships and the variety of things that come into that. And then there is a rupture and a divorce because not every relationship is forever. And that will channel people out of the church too. So there was a little bit of that in terms of me actually leaving, but in terms of getting a deep understanding of people, and because the church was full of kind of eccentric people and pastors too, right? Like a lot of the charismatic leaders that I was looking up to were incredibly eccentric and also on the spectrum. But just because the power doesn't necessarily mean it's being used for good.
Totally.
Right? So I think the thing that started forcing me to, without getting into like the depths of all the stories, was that there was incongruence that was starting to come up that I could see in the systems of patterns between people's behaviour that was professed, the words that they preached and
what
spoke,
they lived,
and then what they lived,
right?
Especially when it came to in our church being a very neoliberal capitalist church of the inequity in the wealth distribution amongst the senior leadership comparatively to the rest of the congregation. And then also the complex socio-political hierarchy that existed as well, in terms of people saying, well, God spoke to me and this random person over here is actually God's anointed right now, and you better do what they say because the Spirit of God is on them. But they were actually a really horrible person, right? And in many instances, quite narcissistic. So it was sort of that incongruence that I saw, and even in the way that I was then treated by leadership, including to the point of leaders threatening to character assassinate me. With senior leaders at some points over some pretty basic disagreements as well.
Well, not even talking about the divorce yet. That was before. Wow.
So that kind of set the groundwork.
The conflict on
the
interesting. Autistic people have less tolerance with injustice in general, especially social injustice, right? No wonder I'm doing social justice. But depending on your place in hierarchy and depending on your place in privilege in general, that tends to land very differently. And that's when exclusion comes. A lot of autistic people get fired, excluded, expelled, or give up altogether because they just can't handle it.
So I think that I think first for the especially the ADHD person, and I guess something that's been true of my own life, there's that justice element that you spoke about, and and that existed my whole life, right? Like in kindergarten, my
tell me,
my kindergarten teacher apologized through my mother 25 years later. For what she believed was the worst thing she ever did in her whole career, which was
tell me, what did she do?
My teacher was must have been having a horrible day,
right?
And I put my hand up in the middle of we're all sitting on the mat and dobbed on Tom, and and I said, Miss, Tom's doing something, and she goes, well, Jesse Noble, you're just the king of the dobbers, aren't you? And obviously kids and their nickname stuck. And so I was now in kindergarten, and then a really good chunk of the way through school, the king of the dobbers. And so obviously teacher feels quite horrible about that
Yeah.
and had self-reflection knowing what she'd done. But yeah.
Especially, again, hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
The teacher said that.
Yeah.
Therefore, the students feel like, okay, if the
And
teacher said
that sounds hilarious,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I think that, yeah, there's the justice streak and the truth-telling component that exists. And then when you add the ADHD part, there's the RSD that comes in and forms that, which is speaking to that emotional turmoil that you're talking about as well, because it amplifies it.
Yeah.
Because there's sort of the rejection sensitivity component that comes in as well. I think what happens in terms of, where you're talking about the expulsion or the othering and things as well, the dynamic that occurs is that because you have autistic people naming things and, in a sense, truth-telling, and doing so in a...
At least calling it out, let's just say, even if it's a perspective.
And I guess when you start talking about like advanced pattern recognition and things too, doing so in a systemic way, where you've now analysed
every possible
and probably in some instances quite succinctly, right?
Yeah.
You've presented a conundrum to people who I don't think it's fair to just say who are neurotypical, because the truth of the organizations that I have, as I said, like with church or like even in a military context, you have autistic and ADHD people, other neurodiverse people around the place who are bought into the mission and the value set and are very focused on that, right?
Yeah.
So then when you do name and truth tell about some things or have an observation that hits really close to home, one for neurotypical people who may just ignore things and want to just carry on, and then for those who are, say, really neurodivergently focused on and bought in and believe into the values of the
inflexible,
the structure and things, you've now created cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
And so for, I guess, in the neurodivergent case, the cognitive dissonance is really uncomfortable, and so that really upsets people. And so that can create an othering laterally. And then I guess in the neurotypical sense, from a community perspective, that can be like,
we don't do this here.
No, right? we don't talk about that. Or let's say we don't talk about Bruno. Like, in a family structure context.
Yeah.
And so it's I think that kind of starts creating that chasm.
Yeah.
And so but then the individual is also suffering the pain, as you mentioned, of the things as well. So
to the degree that you cannot live a single day, in some cases, if depending on the level of the injustice that you are, it doesn't even need to be you, the person that is suffering the injustice. Sometimes is you just talking about someone else, right? Which is interesting, because how many times I've been punished by someone else's problems completely. I was just defending someone else.
Every day.
Yeah. I was just trying to help. But and again, would do it again because that was the right thing to do. But I think what makes us so good at the same time suffering so much for this is that we sometimes cannot deal living in that system, which neurotypicals acknowledge the problem. And a lot of time when they do, they acknowledge that when there is a problem, but they can go back to work the next day. They can go back to the church the next day. They can't ignore that to some degree. They're just feeling like, I'm going to take what I can from this situation and move on, where we not necessarily have that ability to just take what we can and move on, because we know that that's not right intrinsically at principle.
Yeah.
How many times you hear that you're difficult? You've just been so difficult. Can you just cope? Can you just get along?
Yeah.
And that is so hard. Friendships also, I feel like for neurodivergent people can be very intense, whereas neurotypical people tend to move on from that and continue being friends with people that are not being necessarily their best to them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you experience that a lot? Have you experienced that a lot in your friendships or in your loving relationships?
Yeah. I think I probably realize it more in hindsight. My understanding of my unique brand of neurodivergency, because I've heard you say before, when you know one autistic person, you know one autistic person.
Yeah.
You can't make assumptions about everybody. There might be similarities, right? We've all got
Yeah.
a unique brand. So I've only been coming to the understanding of that in probably the last 3 years, right? And so a lot of it's been actually alongside the understanding of my gender diversity,
Right.
and coming out and being queer, right?
Mhm.
So, which has also been a very tumultuous time,
Mhm.
because I've essentially been going through like a second puberty. Couple that in with having left the church 3 years before that.
Right.
So over a 6-year period, I've been having to disentangle the internal rule set that I grew up with, which
Right.
meant that being isolated within the church and then the church's school, and then living on an isolated semi-rural property in Sydney as well. I didn't have necessarily lots of contact with the outside world. And so even university, I was kind of at odds with my friends there too, through all of that. So I've had to go through puberty proper, or like growing up a second time, right, in my 30s.
With less help, actually, as well.
And as a parent.
Yeah.
As a single parent.
Caring for, not
Yeah.
being looked after necessarily.
And having workplace responsibilities
Right.
of being in charge of large numbers of people at different points in time whilst going through that too.
Yeah.
And coming out nationally, but being the face of that change for a national institution, in a positive light, but very tumultuous time. So
at that point, did you have a lot of friends already?
Yeah, I had enough, but I would say that friendships is always something I feel like I've desperately wanted all of my life, and I can connect with people really well, but I find myself in cognitive dissonance frequently in the areas that you're talking about, particularly when people's actions don't match their words.
Which is so often,
right? And that's like a really critical, it's like a real thing that I get hung up on, because my yes is my yes. And so not to assume a victim mentality, right? But knowing that there's in the last few years, particularly where it's been really heightened, knowing there's been many things going on for me, and I just need care around me to vent or debrief to, about the really shit dating experiences I've been having, or the fact that a right-wing news outlet is attacking me nationally, right? Or that people are writing really nasty things about me on social media, or open letters to the Prime Minister about what a disgrace I personally am to a national institution. And knowing that that's a lot.
Very much.
And then talking to friends and trying to tell them these things, and then trying to provide care to them by going, hey, I know that this is a lot, but those people were going, no, it's totally fine. It's totally fine.
But then punishing you other way.
And then breaking up with me as a friend a month later, right?
Right.
And it's not even that I've overshared with these people from the get-go. And let's be clear, oversharing is actually a really problematic term. Which I think does a disservice to neurodivergent people.
Yeah.
To say that,
especially ADHDers.
Yeah, to say that, oh, you're an oversharer, because I think also in that space so often we go, hey, sorry, oversharing, or we'll dismiss ourselves and be like, and I'm working on not oversharing at the moment, and that's actually wrong, because you're trying to connect with people in a way that is real and in a way that is I would say somewhat caring, like because there's meant to be an emotional connection to it.
Yeah.
You're not trying to be extractive from people. You're trying to connect with people. Yeah, I think it can scare people a lot as well, even from the sense, I mean, you've witnessed me doing this, when you can see things and you can ask a question and all of a sudden it hits to the core of people. Like when we were on the fellowship together, there was a number of time with lecturers where I asked a question.
Panelists.
Yeah. And not even in a controversial, systematic structures way. But
although we love a controversy.
Well, sure, why not? One of our lecturers was like, you've got to have strong convictions loosely held, but I have some strong convictions that are really strongly held. And then it was like, so what is one of those for you? And then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, this person had like unraveled in front of the class. And then they stopped and they looked at me in front of the class and went, how the hell do you do that? I'm like, it's superpower. Like,
but it's a superpower because the more you is stepping into who you really are in all the possible ways, by diagnose, by gender, by everywhere you are in the world, and feeling comfortable about that person that you're becoming, that's when this kind of question is so natural to you. And not natural at all to the people that are trying to be something to other people that are not so authentic.
Yeah, it becomes, I guess, that's the point though, that like in those instances, and as I think was clear in that scenario, like that's confronting to that person.
Totally.
Because they go, wait, I don't normally do this, but this is, I guess, the specialty of neurodivergent people in many instances, right? Because I don't want to talk about the weather anymore, right? And so like it doesn't mean anything unless it has a significant bearing on the day, right? So that can be confronting to people who aren't used to being kind of asked or called out that way as well, which is similar to the truth-telling component with an organizational community structure.
Something I come across a lot in my studies is the people getting diagnosed late in life going to that deep grieving, which tends to last sometimes years, which tends to then, after you're coming out of that, is you owning who you really are and not being trying to fit in, not trying to mask anymore. Although to some degree, you always will mask because the world is still not fit up for us. So if we want to succeed in any way, we will have to some degree mask. But masking less, or even making choices of who we want in our life from a perspective of, I would rather have one friend than 1,000 friends that drain me.
I have enough life experience now. I have enough self-awareness now, because like I'll be straight with people and I'll be like, sure, you tell me when. my old assistant or like co-worker used to say, when we were in charge of a whole lot of people together, used to say, we always give people enough rope to hang themselves with. Like the let them part is the actions speak louder than words.
True.
Which we have an issue processing because our yes is our yes. Yeah. And so when we say we're going to do something, like I will, if I say I'm going to turn up, short of being on my deathbed, I will basically turn up, right? Because I go, no, I made a commitment to somebody and I'm going to, I'll either renegotiate that if it's really not going to work, but that's a pretty extreme circumstance, or I could have been dying, right? I will do that thing because I feel strongly that I made a commitment to somebody.
Yeah.
So
have you always been like that?
Yeah. And I just thought it was what I got taught in church. Now I realize that it's always been autistic Jesse. So you need to, let people do the thing. The other thing that we were taught in church that I thought was really problematic was that the concept of forgiveness was about forgiving and forgetting, right?
Yeah.
But so often that was used to dismiss perpetrators of really serious offences within those institutions, right? Without any accountability, or they stepped down temporarily, what we'd call getting cancelled these days, where then, particularly in the instance of cis white males, they just get re-put back in the position a few months later, right?
And everyone forgets.
But that's not true.
Yeah. No.
Because something I came to understand close to leaving the church was that the concept of forgiveness is, although when we get into sort of the etymologies and the history behind the concepts of forgiveness, it's about the releasing and the forgiving of a debt. A lot of it is actually, the forgiveness is more about you and your internal condition and your heart being released versus something that somebody else has done, unless it's something very blatant that was obvious and it was an act of commission that they did versus an act of omission that they might not even know that they've sort of sinned against you, sort of, so to speak. So I think that, yes, we need to forgive people, but what gets described as a grudge, or what I've described to you as like my Capricorn, like scorched earth tendency, is actually very pragmatic.
Yeah.
And so you can forgive people and you can let them go in their way, but you know who is trustworthy and who is not.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because that is actually how you survive and learn and function in the world. We certainly need to do the internal work about how petty we're going to be, and being petty is fun, right? Like at times, but how pragmatically we're going to move through the world and how much we're going to hold on to that weight, because it kind of become a ball and chain that holds you down a bit.
Yeah.
So you certainly need to work out what is that, the balance of how you hold that knowledge, and then what is the unique process for you that you need to go through, say, the RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria process. Because so far research says that you can't get rid of that process. It is what it is for you. As part of your unique brand.
You have tools to manage.
And that's exactly it, right? So what is that? What is the unique tool set that you've got to work out for you? Is it somatic movement? Is it,
in my case, it would be moving to a house in the middle of the woods and never have to contact anybody again.
But I mean, like, that's
no,
when
totally.
people say they're not, when people go, oh, I'm never dating again and I'm so healed now. Well, actually, you don't know, because there's no stimuli, right? You cut it off. So, which is important at times.
Totally.
It can be part of the process and part of the tool set.
I think one of the things that I realized as an adult, and it's still very hard for me even now in my age, is to how much I'm giving in advance. That's all I'm giving myself the compassion for, because I'm not saying that what I give to people up front is wrong. To the contrary, I think that's fantastic, and everyone should be grateful for it. But in a world that we live, I have been burned out too many times by giving people too much in advance. Is not everyone that can have that access so early.
What you were saying, you were talking about before and giving, and it's a slow process going through this journey, but I think that something we need to think about a lot of the time is that, yes, we lead with generosity and we're willing to give, and informed consent matters. I think typically we tend to feel like, well, I'm giving and therefore people will want that. And we've got to think about, are they ready for it? What's the level they can what's the level they can actually receive at? And asking if they do want things, right? Then it allows people to have permission to buy in, versus feeling overwhelmed or they have to be diplomatic and take the thing. And it's not always easy when you've got so much that you want to give to be stopping every time being like, would you like to hear about the thing? There was this video that was made to talk about the concept of affirmative consent in sexual interactions, to describe what is consent. And so they use the analogy of boiling the tea to give somebody a cup of tea, but that just because you wanted tea today doesn't mean you want tea next week.
Or the same kind of tea.
Exactly, right. And so it goes through all these hilarious scenarios to then be like, sex is the same. It's not always like you need to get
constantly, right?
It's all illustrated as a cartoon, and one of them is like, you definitely like a person who's unconscious definitely doesn't want tea, right? There's this cartoon trying to pour tea, and I think it can be like that at
So
times,
true.
right? Like
Yeah.
someone who's overwhelmed, or their head's full, or whatever's going on in their lives, and then you've got all these things to give to them.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily need more tea right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And so developing the self-awareness
Yeah.
for ourselves to be able to mindfully operate in a consent-based model in all areas of our lives.
Yeah.
Because I think that, especially in the contemporary context, the consent conversation is so reduced to sexual interactions. But actually, when you understand informed consent models, you understand that informed consent models actually permeate every single area of our life.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. And not only from the person that is offering the love, let's say, also the person that is trying to receive. You know, sometimes people don't have the capacity, and therefore understanding themselves and having the compassion of saying, I would love that, but not right now. And that's when it comes to the authenticity, you know, like understanding where in a process of being truly who you are, that's when you are more capable of having those times to think about, well, actually, I would love that, but not now. And being okay to say, to withdraw from something gracefully as possible. Right. Religion. Are we going to talk about religion? No, maybe not religion, but it's spirituality.
Yeah.
There are so many people in our community that is stuck in, you know, religion in general, because there is structure in religion. And the more you are authentic, as far as I can see anyway, my experience with other people in a community, it's not necessarily about a religion that gives you the structure, but is you creating the structure that works for you, which is like the accommodation at work, let's just say, but a spiritual version of it. The problem of losing religion in many cases is people get really lost.
Yeah.
It's very sad, because it's something that we need in general, right? Like, we need the spirituality, we need to have that connection with something bigger than us. And when that was always a religion or a church, how did you navigate from the point of losing that, and then now where you are now with your spirituality?
It's been hard. I'd say I'm still navigating it, sort of 6-7 years later. I grew up in a church and a religion where every week at church was like, and we're not about a religion, we're about a relationship. It's a relationship with God. But yet there was rules still,
Right.
which is a religion, right?
Yeah.
And so then when, like, I lost everything overnight by choosing to get divorced because I was in a fundamentally broken relationship, I found it very difficult on the other side of that initially, because the community that should have been supporting me was, even if it was saying that it was going to, was still had an agenda that it was trying to work to, which was to patch me up and get me back together with my ex-partner, and to shame and guilt me about that I shouldn't be happy about getting divorced, and yet I would argue it was one of the best decisions I've made in my life.
Totally.
And I was called a coward, even though it was one of the scariest, most difficult decisions I had made in my life.
Completely. Especially with kids.
Yeah.
That's hard.
And young kids, right?
Yeah.
And then even family was telling me that I was going to, like, absolutely mess my kids up, and that they would be in therapy
as if a
later,
bad relationship wouldn't be worse.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And so, whereas I was like, well, I'm making this decision so that my kids are modeled healthy living and healthy relationships.
Yeah.
So then from the spiritual perspective, trying to disentangle my spirituality from all of these expectations and these rules about who God was or what God is, was really difficult, right?
Because it's also something you learn in school, right? Your school was religious? No.
Well, my school was religious and it was run by the church that I went
Right.
to.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was in this church 24/7 basically. All the way from kindergarten through year 12. The relationship required that I would go to church every Sunday or multiple times during the week. And now I wasn't doing that. And so now I felt like I was a bad Christian, or like,
abandoning.
Yeah, right. Like, I'm now an adulterer because I'm divorced, or whatever the spin was the church wanted to put on its interpretation of these things. So the way I sort of initially dealt with the cognitive dissonance was having a and I guess, this is because my spiritual views are much more expansive now, but at that point in time, I was like, God, I hate your people.
Take me out of here.
And right. I guess also I should say the other part of the community aspect that we were always preached about as well was that, the church would say, well, Jesus knows his church is fundamentally broken, but that's why he wants us to be in community with everybody because the human condition is flawed. So I'm also having to live in this cognitive dissonance, especially from a neurodivergent perspective, right?
So interesting. I've been through that too.
Yeah, but I was like, God, I hate your people, and I'm really, I don't know what's going on with your Bible and your word, but you said that if you love the Lord your God with all your heart and you love your neighbor as yourself, you'll satisfy all the requirements of the law.
Yeah.
And I said, so I'm just going to keep doing that, and we'll work this out kind of in flight. And that's sort of where I've just gone from there. And then I guess the irony, and my transness is part of my spiritual experience too.
Totally.
And kind of going on that disentanglement journey, and then like 3 years later realizing that I was trans. Ironically, my spirituality has become more expansive, and then like the love from a human rights and a social justice perspective has become actually quite centered.
Yes.
In that too.
Beautiful.
So funnily enough, all of the things that I was told, apart from trying to work out like the church spiritual relationship that was actually a religion side of things, all of the things that I was told in church that I was going to feel guilt and shame and and sin about, whether it was like dating and sex outside of marriage, or more expansive views of the world, I have not felt a drop of, because everything I've always done from a lens of love and respect for other people.
Yeah.
But that's just me in the world, right? Like that's like we've talked before that like neurodivergent people can be bad too.
Oh, yes.
In terms of morals and ethics and values. There's not necessarily always a silver lining to it.
Absolutely.
So that's my experience.
To me, it sounds like you became more and more aligned to who you're meant to be and who you feel like you should be, being more open to possibilities and being more flexible on the relationship with God or goddesses or whatever you want to believe.
Yeah.
Which breaks a little bit of that pattern that that structure that gave us some sort of comfort, maybe because it was already predetermined. It was just something to follow. And now we're a little bit more open to explore on our own pace, and having that feeling of truth. This is what's truth for me. Doesn't need to be truth to you. What do you feel like is one thing that you're still working on really hard to break from those old patterns, and now that you're getting more into your authentic self?
I think for me it's always been the navigation of relationships.
Yeah.
And more specifically from like the personal relationships side of things. So I guess in the heteronormative monogamous kind of construct, we prioritize the couple and specifically the romantic monogamous relationship of long-term partnerships or marriages over every other relationship in those lives, right? Relational anarchy is valuing the relationship with your kids or your platonic best friend as much as maybe the romantic relationship in your life. And so yeah, it's a bit more of an expansive view of how you navigate all the relationships in your life. And it's meant to once again be about individual negotiation. That doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's a non-monogamous kind of construct that you operate under, but it's more about that reflectiveness in your life. So because there is so much hurt and abuse in my life and patterns that we've been talking to of that are quite extractive from us, and where you've run into double empathy problems or the misalignment between people kind of taking and extracting from you when you've been really generous, and all you want is sort of reciprocity in that over your life, and that's not there, and gratitude. Remaining graceful and not hard-hearted, I think is probably always the challenge. So I find that it's a challenge for me to regulate my let's call it the RSD wolf and the autistic wolf banding up together and becoming pyromaniacs and burning the world to the ground, right? At the pattern recognition of things that may have happened to you previously,
spiraling quickly to conclusion as well.
And so giving things space and time. I read something the other day that said, so it was from an ADHD person who said that before they send any texts or messages, especially like in relationship contexts of any form, they eat food first.
What? A specific food or
not
any
just
food?
any food.
They eat.
They make sure they eat, and all of a sudden they're far more regulated.
That's incredible.
And the world that was falling apart for them has significantly come down a lot.
Okay.
It's really important that like people who have ADHD eat, because and as a form of regulation, because you're sort of burning through energy a lot, right? Because you're like going all the time. And so you can be like bottoming out from it because you haven't had enough sustenance in your life. And it's been true for me at times.
Really?
So
that's incredible.
So I think that
I heard that from another person from the gym situation. If they don't work out, they will burn out.
So it's I've had a mental health worker in my life previously talk about, you don't just have one inner child, you actually have many inner children,
right?
Who represent the
phases of your life,
the different parts of you. So I find that it's I guess the analogy would be, I described it as the wolves before, but it's preventing say the wounded inner children in my life from partying up together as teenagers and kind of going and burning the world to the ground
taking control of the mothership,
right? Like and keeping that sort of form of control a little bit at times. One of the other concepts for me is and this is something I'm still always working at, is prioritizing the relationship with myself. Like you need to view your relationship to yourself as one of those actual relationships, right?
It's like that oxygen mask on you first. Theoretically, everyone knows, but actually practically not many people do it. And it comes to a point where the more authentic we want to be, the less masking we want to do in our daily life, requires us to understand and have the compassion to us to take the time that we need, the distance we need first, right? And I see you doing that. I'm doing that. But how many times we had to burn out to get to this point, right?
Yeah, I think I said to you the other day, like the my year's going really well at this point because like one of my goals for this year was not reaching sickness and burnout by the middle of the year, and I've successfully done that so far, right? Like, okay, common colds and things kind of came in, and I had to manage them, as life does. But I haven't gotten sick this year, and that's like
so interesting.
Massive goal tick for the year.
From the moment I got the diagnosis and I started to unmask and all of those conscious things and all the work, this year has been the busiest year of my life, which should be giving me a burnout a month. And I have probably just managed not to. I almost feel like it's getting close sometimes, but I can manage somehow.
Yeah.
And that comes again with that understanding that instead of having a Sunday cleaning, the only day that I have free to look after my health, instead of me punishing myself with cleaning the house, I just let it be filthy for another week.
I did the same thing on the weekends, right? Yeah. I was like, I had all these things to do, and I was like, no. Today,
bath.
Bath.
Movie.
Yeah, I'm binge watching The L Word.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
especially in being an extrovert, I can imagine, you still have the needs that I don't, right? You have the needs to be on a nightclub on Saturday night. You also have that need of being in your games, in your communities, way more than I have, but you still have to have those moments where you're like, now I need to be alone. Now I need to have my time, and being okay with that, because I feel like potentially before you knew that's what you needed to function, you probably punish yourself to some degree to feel that you needed it.
I remember when I was in my 20s and I got glandular fever because I was going really, really hard. Probably the one piece of advice that I actually remember my mum ever giving me, and she said, there's distress and there's eustress, but they're both still stress. It's like a joyous kind of idea, but she's like, they're both still stress.
Yes.
You're burning the candle at both ends.
Right.
And that always really stuck with me. Because I'd work really hard and I'd party really hard.
But you didn't give yourself the time to recover. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I definitely never have. And on top of that, I think for me, it was not only that, I was punishing myself for not wanting to go out because I never wanted. I never wanted to go night clubbing. I never wanted to do any of these things, but I punished myself to go because that was required to fit in.
Expected.
Yeah. Yes. And then I would be like, and why I'm needing a week to recover from a night out. Yeah, it's wild, and how important it is to preserve that energy. And that's why it comes to friendships and relationships that we want to maintain, how important it is that you have the right people around you, because then you know that when you're going out with that person, yes, you are still using the energy level in your battery, but you know that's going to be worthwhile in a way, Even when I go out with people that I want to go out with, I still want to have that recovery time.
Yeah.
But they're okay with that. They understand that. No one is telling me that I want to be a single person in a marriage. All right. So I will leave it at that, because I think we still have a lot to talk. Like if we want to do another podcast, I still think we should. Yeah. There are other things that we can talk about, because we are in a way aligned in the same level of work. You in your not-for-profit with the LGBT community, which is the same for me working with the neurodivergent community. Surely we will have more things to talk about in this podcast. Yeah. And we should do this next time. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me today.